The toilet seat was still warm when the ocean tried to kill me. It was 4:30 in the morning on May 26, 2013. I was the cook aboard the Jascon 4, a tugboat working off the coast of Nigeria, about 20 miles out to sea. We were doing routine stabilization work, helping secure an oil tanker at a Chevron platform. Nothing about that night felt different. I'd woken up early, like I always did, read Psalm 54, said my prayers, and headed to the galley. Then I stopped to use the toilet before starting breakfast. That bathroom saved my life. It also became the closest thing to a coffin I ever want to experience. The first thing I felt was a lurch, not just a wave rolling under the hull. Every sailor knows that feeling. This was different. The whole ship groaned and started tilting fast, faster than anything I'd felt in 3 years of working at sea. I heard someone on the intercom, the bosun, shouting that the vessel was about to capsize. Then the world flipped upside down. The toilet above me, the ceiling below. In about 3 seconds, the Jascon 4 rolled completely over and started sinking. The WC tore free and hit me in the head. Everything went dark. The first hour. Don't panic, don't die. I was in total blackness, underwater, inside an upside-down ship that was plunging toward the ocean floor. I had no shoes, no shirt, just my boxer shorts. I forced myself to think. I remembered there were other guys somewhere ahead of me. I could see the glow from one of their phones faintly cutting through the water. I swam toward it. When I found them, they were already in the alleyway, a group of them working together to push open a watertight door. I joined in at the back. We pushed and shoved, but the door wouldn't budge. Then the water from below came rushing in, fast and hard. Some of them went up. Some went still. I made a decision in that moment. Swim back inside, deeper into the ship. Don't fight the flood. Find air. The force of the incoming water pushed me into the second engineer's cabin. The door slammed shut behind me. I was trapped in a pitch-black room at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, and the ship was still going down. I could feel it settling. The grinding, the creaking, the whole structure groaning as it hit the seabed. Then it stopped moving. 30 meters down, 100 feet below the surface. Dead silence. But I was breathing. There was an air pocket, a bubble of trapped air that the flooding water hadn't reached yet. In that pocket, pressed against the overturned ceiling of the cabin, with water up to my chest, I was alive. Day 1. Making the darkness work for me. The first thing I had to accept was that I could not see anything. Not my hand in front of my face, not the wall 6 inches away. Total, absolute darkness. The kind that starts to mess with your mind if you let it. I couldn't let it. I started feeling around the cabin, methodically, wall by wall, shelf by shelf. In one of the bags I found floating around, my hand closed on something. A can. Then another. A tin of sardines. A bottle of Coca-Cola. That was it. That was all the food and drink in my entire world. I knew better than to touch the seawater. The salt had already stripped the skin off my tongue just from the splashing. Drinking it would kill me faster than thirst. So I rationed that one bottle of Coke, sipping as slowly as I could manage. The temperature down there was close to freezing. I was in my underwear. I found some loose coveralls floating in the water and pulled them on, then used strips of the fabric to fashion a rope, a lifeline I could tie to the water dispenser, so I wouldn't lose my way in the blackness when I dove down to search for an exit hatch. I dove down again, and again, 10 times or more, feeling along the hole for the watertight door. Every time, I'd come back, gasping,
pulling myself along my makeshift rope back to the air pocket. Every time, the door was locked or wouldn't give. At some point, I stopped diving. I had to conserve what little air was left. I pulled boards and whatever I could find above the waterline and made a small platform to crouch on. If I stayed in the water too long, hypothermia would finish what the ocean had started. So I sat there on my little platform, shaking, legs dangling in the freezing water, and I waited.
Day 2. The sounds you can't unhear. When you're at 30 meters depth, you can hear everything that happens above you. The pressure and the water carry sound in ways you'd never expect on the surface. I heard vessels passing. I heard things dropping into the water far above. And at some point during that second day, I heard something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. The fish came into the ship. I could hear them in the dark around me. I knew some of my crewmates were still in the vessel. I had touched them on one of my dives, felt them floating in the corridors, swollen, still. And now I could hear the fish feeding on them. I cannot describe what it does to a man to sit in total darkness and listen to that. I knew their names. I knew their families. The man who was supposed to go on shore leave with me. He told me his wife had just given birth. Another crewmate's wife had given birth to twins. He'd never seen them. These were men who would come to me with their worries, their stories, their plans. I was the cook. On a vessel, the cook is like everyone's mother. And now, I sat in the dark, listening. I started praying, not quiet prayers. I talked to God out loud, reminding him of every promise, every moment he had carried me through. To stay warm, I developed a system. Every time the cold became unbearable, I would cup water in my hands and pour it over my chest. Not to warm up, the water was freezing, but the shock of it would jolt my body alert again, force my lungs to work harder, buy me another stretch of consciousness. I did that over and over through the night. Day 3. Hope and the dying air. By the third day, the air in that pocket was changing. I could feel it. Breathing was getting harder, not because the air was running out exactly, but because I had been exhaling carbon dioxide into that sealed space for over 60 hours. The pocket was slowly turning toxic. My breaths felt shorter. My head felt thick and strange. And then I heard it. A sound. Something dropping into the water above the wreck. The dull thud of an anchor. Then, unmistakably, the sound of divers entering the water. I grabbed the nearest piece of metal and started banging it against the hull as hard as I could. Bang. 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 Come on. Hear me. I'm here. I heard them moving through the ship. The glow of their lights reached me faintly through the water. And then, silence. The sounds faded. They'd moved to a different section of the vessel. They hadn't heard me. I sat back down on my platform, in the dark, alone. Then, I saw it. A light. Not above me, below, in the water, near the watertight door I'd been trying to open. A beam sweeping through the murk. A diver, working his way along the hull, doing what they'd come to do, recover bodies. I slid off my platform and dove into the water. I came up behind him and tapped him on the shoulder. The diver, Nico Van Heerden, nearly came out of his wetsuit. He spun around. In the darkness, at the bottom of the ocean, something had tapped him. He expected a dead body. I waved at him with my left hand. He grabbed my hand. He reached back up into the air pocket with me, and through the communication system in his helmet, His supervisor heard him shout something that the entire crew above would remember for the rest of their lives. "He's alive! He's alive!" Getting out. The hard part nobody tells you about. Here's the thing they don't show you in movies. Surviving the disaster is only half the problem. After 60 hours at 30 meters depth, my body had absorbed enormous amounts of nitrogen under 3 times normal atmospheric pressure. If the divers had pulled me straight to the surface, the nitrogen would have bubbled out of my blood like a can of soda being opened, a condition called decompression sickness that can paralyze or kill you. So they couldn't just take me up. Van Heerden came back into the air pocket with a special oxygen mask and helped me get it on. They flushed the pocket with fresh oxygen so I could breathe properly for the first time in days. Then they gave me water and waited, monitoring me from above through the communication system. Then came the diving helmet. Once I had it on, a voice crackled through clearly. "Harrison, can you hear me?" I said yes. He told me his name was Kobe. He told me exactly what was going to happen next and how to follow the diver out. He talked me through every step. I told them I had nothing left to swim with. I had no strength. Van Heerden grabbed me and guided me to the diving bell, a pressurized chamber they'd brought down with them. Inside that bell, the pressure gradually adjusted. Then they began the long, slow ascent to the surface. 3 more days. That's how long I spent in a decompression chamber on the surface ship. 3 more days of controlled pressure, being fed and monitored, while my body slowly readjusted to normal atmospheric pressure. When they finally opened that chamber, my vital signs were completely normal. The doctors testing me couldn't believe it. They kept asking questions, checking my memory, running tests. I answered everything. Every question, every phone number they asked for. I was fine. Aftermath. Going back. When I got home, the crowds outside were massive. My wife was there. When she saw me, she dropped to her knees on the ground, crying and praising God. That moment, I can't put it into words without feeling it all over again. But the nights were a different story. For 2 weeks, every time I was inside my house at night, I felt the walls closing in, felt the floor tilting. I'd grab my wife by the shoulder and bolt for the door, convinced the house was sinking. Over and over. My company eventually sent a medical expert who told me I needed to change my environment to recover. Then something unexpected happened. I went to Gambia to recover, and the hotel was right on the beach. One morning, I walked down to the water, waded in, and swam out. Far out. My wife watched from the shore, terrified. I came back, swam in the hotel pool, and did it again the next day, and the day after that. I wasn't afraid of the water. I was afraid of being trapped. Those are 2 very different things. By 2015, I had enrolled in professional diving school. The school's senior instructor was nervous to train me. The man who hadn't even been in a shipwreck was scared on my behalf. He assigned a young female instructor named Laura to work with me. They put me in the tank. I did well. They took me back to the open ocean. I did well again. In 2018, I went back for more training and became the first in my group to reach 50 meters depth. And then I went back to work as a professional diver in the ocean off the coast of Nigeria. One day, they asked me to dive at 2 in the morning. Sharks had been circling the vessel. I could see them from the deck. My supervisor told me we were going in anyway, and if I refused, I'd be sent home. I got into my gear. On the way down, a shark bumped the equipment basket. Hard. I kept going. I reached the bottom, did the job, and came back up. The dive site was the same location where the JASCON 4 went down. The same place where 11 of my crewmates died. The same 30 meters of water that had held me prisoner for 60 hours.
I did the job, I came back up, and I went back the next day.